Hello, greetings hunters. Today I'm going to make my favorite monsters in Monster Hunter Rise tier list. Let's start with this monster. Honestly, it's pretty forgettable monster in my opinion. Don't get me wrong, to some people it's pretty cool, but to me I don't really see the value in this when it comes to gathering materials or making armor of it, because there are way better monsters in my opinion for you to try and do that. So I think C tier is fine. I don't think it's bad enough to put in D tier, so I think C tier is just fine. Next up is Valstrax. What is there to say about this creature? It's absolutely my favorite thing I've ever seen in the game. Out of all the monsters that I've faced so far, this is by far my favorite one. Its movesets, its attack pattern, its attacks, its ultimate attacks, it's absolutely beautiful. Especially when you fight the Risen version of this thing. The Ryzen version of this thing is absolutely a monster. If you're not careful, his ambush attack can definitely one-shot you. So due to that, I'm putting him on S tier. There's no debate. Next up is this thing. I'm pretty sure you encounter these in every map. They're not really that dangerous. They're just cats minding their own business. You can attack them if you want, but they're not hostile to you in whatsoever. So I'm putting them on D tier. Next up is the Great Izuchi. This is one of the first monsters you actually encounter when you play the game for the first time. And to be fair, this was the very first monster that I had when I gathered materials and made armor for it. So I made a longsword of this when I initially started the game. I made a longsword of this weapon and I made armor for it. And I will say this, I do like the Great Izuchi's armor. I think it looks pretty cool. But when it comes to benefits and overall stats, it's pretty mediocre. But to be fair, since it is the first monster, it's not really that high of an expectation. So I'm putting him low C. Next up is Arzuros, which is the bear, pretty much. I don't think I've made any armor for this weapon either. So I don't really have a huge opinion with it. But it has a pretty cool grab attack, I like it. And if you happen to have honey in your inventory, that if it grabs you, then it can steal the honey from you, which is, I think it's pretty funny to add that. I'm going to put him on B tier simply because of that grab attack. Next up is Anjanath. I like this creature. It was actually the very first good armor that I made from this monster. And it's probably one of my favorite ones in early game. But when you get to mid to late game, this thing becomes annoying to fight afterwards. I'm going to put him in high B. Next up, I honestly forgot about this monster's names too. Holy crap. Okay. Well, either way, if I remember right, this thing is pretty cool. It has some pretty unique attacks. Every once in a while, you fight it, but it's not that interesting to me as well, so I'm going to put him over there. Betelgeuse. I like this thing. I really vibe with the armor you get, the Pride armor. It's pretty cool. Especially when you put it on your dog. He looks like a lion, and I really like it. And because of that, I'm going to put him on A tier. Volvidon. To be fair, the only good use I can think of is if you want to give a paralyzing weapon to your Palamute. So if you want to do that, then by all means, you should definitely do it with the Volvidon one, because it has a pretty decent paralyze effect. So, I'm going to put on B tier. Khezu. I am not a huge fan of its design at all. I don't like it. To be fair, it's probably one of the most hideous monsters I've ever seen. So every time I fight it, I can't help but just feel disgusted. So I'm going to put him on D tier simply because of that. Next up is this monster. I also forgot its name, but I just call it the banana monster because it looks like a banana. At least that's what me and my friends call it. So every time we fight it, it's like, oh shit, it's the banana monster. So there's that. Pretty mid weapons and armor that it can produce, so I'm going to put it on C tier as well. Tigrex. A really cool combination of a tiger and, well, not a tiger, but it's a really cool combination of, well, a tiger and a T-Rex. Simply because of the color scheme, and it's mostly a dinosaur. That's pretty much what it is. So I'm going to put him on A tier. There's nothing else to me to discuss about it. I'm not a huge fan of it, but I do like his design, so purely for design reasons, I'm putting him on A tier. Okay, next up is, I believe that's Rathalos. Yeah, Rathalos, there you go. Honestly, when it comes to Rathalos, I don't really care that much, to be fair. It's a pretty cool monster, don't get me wrong, but it doesn't really hold a candle to the other cooler monsters that you see in the game. So I think B tier is fine as well. Diablos. I really like its design. And I also like the fact that whenever it fights, it sometimes goes underground and then pops out immediately with a jumping attack. And if you're not careful, it can definitely hit hard. So because of that, I'm going to put him on A tier because I really like his design as well. Next up is Bishaten. I don't really know what it is. I've been debating about whether or not it's a combination of a bat and a monkey. I'm starting to think it's both, maybe. That's really cool to me. I don't know why. I just find it really cool. So, I'm going to put him on high B. Next up is Rajang. Oh boy. This thing pisses me off every time, especially when it's the Furious version of it. Oh lord. But it is a cool raging monkey that destroys everything on its path, so because of that, S tier. I don't think anyone disagrees with me when I'm putting him on S tier. Okay, then there's Narwa. I don't know. This monster is a different one. If I remember right, it's like one of those boss monsters that you encounter in the game. Both her and Ibushi are pretty interesting because they kind of go hand in hand, pretty much. So if I'm going to rate one of them, I might as well put both of them on the tier. So because of that, I think I'm going to put them on low B each. I think that's pretty fitting for them. Next up is the Kadaki, which is basically a fire spider. It's just a massive spider. To be fair, I did make a pretty good charge blade with it. The Crawling Crusher. It's pretty cool. I like it. It's actually my favorite charge blade in Monster Hunter Rise. When it comes to like monster ridings, this thing has the worst mounted Punisher in the entire game. It barely does any damage. If anything, it's the best way to knock down a monster. That's the only reason. You don't use it for damage. You use it to knock it down. So, I guess low C or high C. Yeah, low C is pretty fine. Let's see. Then there's this monster. I forgot its name of it too. Jesus, I am terrible with names. But to be fair, this monster was pretty fun. It's slow, it hits hard, and if you have a high water resistance, this thing barely hurts. So I'm gonna put him on D tier. Pukei. I am not a huge fan of poison, so the fact that when you fight a monster that purely does poison damage is stupid. To be fair, there are other ways to counter it. For example, if you have a hunting horn that has a melody that gives antidote to the player and its allies, then yes, that's good. If you happen to have a Risen Teostris armor set which completely nullifies poison, then this thing is a cakewalk. If you have any, otherwise it's pretty decent, I guess. So I guess low C as well. Next up is Gosalrog. I actually, when I initially got to the master rank and I got sent to the Elgato post, this was the first master rank monster that I've ever made a material out of it. So, simply because of that, I have some fond memories of it. So I'm going to put him on, let's say high B. That seems fair. Then next up is Kuru-Yaku, if I remember right. That's its name, right? It's also one of the first monsters you fight in low tier or in low rank as well. So I might as well put all the low rank monsters in C tier because, like I said, they're low rank, and once you get to the mid game, they're not really useful anymore. So there's that. I think this will wrap it up for now. There's way too many monsters to put onto the list. I think I have time. I think I have one more monster to put on the list, and I think Magna is next. Magnamello. This thing, I love it. I love the concept of it. I love the lore of it. It's so fascinating to me. So because of that, I'm putting him in S tier. And that wraps it up. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you guys find my content more interesting. And if you like me to finish this on the next part, don't forget to shoot up a like, and I'll see you guys later.